Welcome to Don't Be Caged by Your Age, Diane. I'm so happy you're here to share your insights, stories, and advice with our listeners. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine, and I must tell you, I love that title. When I saw your Instagram, I'm like, yes, this is awesome.
Don't be caged by your age. Listeners, when I first launched Don't Be Caged by Your Age podcast and set up the Instagram feed, Diane was one of the first pro aging advocates I followed. And I have to tell you, it is such a treat to have her here with me for this delicious conversation because I'm usually oohing and eyeing in the comments and sharing her incredible Instagram and TikTok feeds everywhere. Diane, please share with listeners what is your age and where are you from?
So I am 61 in just a few days. I'll be 62.
Yay.
Um, and I am originally from Richmond, Virginia. I've spent the bulk of my life in Maryland raising our kids, moved to DC for more than a decade, and then added New York when I changed or was starting to pivot to my next career.
Oh
Who
my
knows
gosh,
what the next move will be?
I know. And Diane, your bio is so fascinating. Listeners, before Diane, as she just mentioned, pivoted into a career as an actor, model, and voiceover artist, she had a 40-year career in media, 30 of which were at the Voice of America, which is an international media company where she traveled to 30 plus countries in sub-Saharan Africa to cover stories. Oh my gosh, Diane. We could go on forever just about that, but if could you pull out like one or two wild or surprising stories from that time period and in your life at that time period so we can get a deeper flavor of who you are and where you've been?
Sure. There are a million stories. So, obviously, like you said, we don't have time. I'll give you just a little bit of that. My degree is in radio, TV, film, and I spent the first part of my career producing and reporting on stories in a local municipality in Fairfax County, Virginia. My husband was working at the Voice of America. He's an electrical engineer and brought home a job application. And I was like, oh, so fast forward 6 months, I was hired and started doing the same thing just for the world. So my beat was Western Europe at first, and I had the good fortune to switch over to Sub-Saharan Africa and started reporting on and producing stories for that continent.
Oh,
Got to visit a million different places, cities, towns, villages, and really was amazed at the power and strength of the human spirit. What people do when under adverse conditions, how they make their lives better, how they make the most of it, how they are not privileged. And that those were personal lessons that have carried me quite a while. Quite a ways, all this time actually. One of the things that has stuck with me, I reported on a lot of health stories. So HIV, AIDS, cholera, reproductive health, and polio eradication was a huge subject. The rest of the world, the developed world, had eradicated polio.
right.
Sub-Saharan Africa was the last continent to do so. So we reported a lot on that. And I remember being in a country where it was political unrest. I won't say which one it was, but I got a chance to interview the president, who was considered by the world as a despot, not a nice man at all. So we were covering a rally, and I saw him and I thought, wow, this is a chance to ask him a question. It was a friendly crowd. And I raised my hand, and his handlers pushed me back. And he said, no, no, let that young lady through. So I got to ask him about polio eradication in his country, and he waxed poetic about the importance of that. And that was such a seminal moment for me to know that despite all of the ugliness of the wars that were taking place around, he was focused on that as well. So there's good and bad with that, of course, but that story stuck with me along with so many others. Again, I could go on and on.
Oh, I know, but you saw a deeper level of humanity, right?
Yes.
So there's in that juxtaposition of deeply caring about something like eradicating polio, which is so important, but on the other hand, witnessing some atrocities, right?
Yes, for
Based
sure.
on, hundreds and hundreds of years of
Yes.
history and strife. But I think too, what you saw was that human spirit. And whenever we can remember how we are connected as humans. Yeah, Diane, I did a 30 episode series called Your Ink Story, which was asking
Mhm.
people to tell me the stories behind their tattoos because I was searching for that same thing, that deeper connection as humans, because mostly the art that people put on their bodies is something that we all relate to: loss, triumph, right?
That
Children,
is
love.
fascinating. I love that. I'm a street portrait photographer. That's my hobby. And connecting, finding ways to connect with people, including their ink, has
Right.
been eye opening. You are so right. I would love to check that out.
Okay. Well, again, I'm always heartened but when I ask someone, tears would form in my eyes and my
Yes,
heart would
yes.
expand because that's what we need to do. And I'm sure that is what you're saying from your lived experiences as a reporter in that part of the world as a journalist. I'm so happy that you got to impact the world in that way. But as you were aging decade by decade, what were your thoughts about what this time period at 61, almost 62 would be like? I mean, we had a lot of stories that we saw around us. We were informed by how other people were aging and retiring and quietly going off to pastures. And listeners, you know how I feel about that. Pastures are for horses.
Oh my goodness. I haven't heard that term in a long time. Put her out to pasture. I love it.
And so, w- in your 50s, what were you thinking about this time period? 'Cause, I mean, I'm trying to find out. Did you know that you'd be a voiceover and an actor and an influencer and pro aging advocate?
Influencer and pro ager, no. Actor, model, voiceover, yes, because the first part of my career included that on a very small scale. So I started doing background work or extra work, they call it, when I was working at the Voice of America. Someone told me that I should apply to be an extra at a show called America's Most Wanted. So I did that. It was a fun, 2 or 3 hours. And I said, let me do a little bit more of this. I had not become a leader or a manager there, so I started doing some local commercials in DC here and there, maybe a dozen or so a year, not too many. And it was so much fun. I became a manager and leader and could no longer leave the job to go to auditions. The responsible thing to do is to take care of your team and help the organization grow and throw yourself into the mission. All of those wonderful things I did and believed in doing, but I had to put acting and modeling to the side. When it came time for COVID, and we're all teleworking on the couch, I
Hmm.
realized I was in a leadership job well away from programming, and it wasn't as much fun as I thought it would be. Not the same as being in the office, and you work way more hours teleworking. I did anyway, and most people I know than you do when you go into the office. You plunge into your work and you work, until it's dark.
Well, there's no
And
distractions. Nobody's
no,
going
yes,
by and going, "Hey,
exactly.
Diane, want to get a coffee? Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
it."
no coffee cooler. So I decided to retire early, and I knew that I would start taking acting classes, et cetera, et cetera. So there was about a 6 week overlap. I took some PTO and started taking acting classes and jumped right in after that. So it picked up very nicely. That was in 2021, mid 2021. And throughout 2022, I was blessed to have a lot of commercial modeling and acting roles. And I was like, oh, I'm on a roll. Screech in 2023. I had half the number of acting and modeling gigs. And
Why do you
I
think
have
that
all,
is?
I'm not sure, several
Hmm.
reasons, but it didn't matter. I was still doing the same thing in terms of looking for work. I self submitted and I have my agents submitting. And it ebbs and flows, particularly in this demographic. Maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit.
And
And I
and for
just
those
knew.
listening, Diane just pointed to her hair. She's a silver-haired goddess.
And so I decided to not pivot necessarily, but the Instagram content that I was consuming, the algorithm led me to Pro Agers, Silver Sisters, and I plunged into that. I am, like I said, I'm a photographer and I used to edit videos for a living. So it just was a nice connection. I have a
Natural segue for you.
Right. I have two photography Instagram accounts that I spent a lot of time on, but not much on my personal. Fast forward, I started pivoting my personal account to be pro aging because I am. And To answer your earlier question, I watched my mother, my aunt, everybody leave their traditional jobs and stay very active as volunteers. My mother played bridge and pinochle and a bunch of social things. So I knew that I wouldn't be sedentary or a couch potato, but I didn't know it would take off this way. So the pro aging Silver Sister community on Instagram is vibrant, and we are defying stereotypes. And that's how I landed in that space.
You all are shattering age related expectations in a big way. And I'm always so blown away by what you do. And listeners, you've got to hop on to Diane's Instagram feed. Go to Diane Britt Smith. It's Diane, BritSmith, to find her. She's changing outfits, asking what you think about this and that. She's trying different things. She's really constantly being out there in engaging content that makes you think, but also feel glad that you're alive and that you are aging, right?
Yes, yes. There's nothing wrong with aging. If we weren't, you know the alternative.
Ex-
So why not
exactly.
embrace it? Yeah. The difference for me is that we didn't think too much about it. 29 was a very difficult age for me because I was thinking, have I achieved everything I wanted to had achieved? And I'm coming up on 30. And once I turned 30, it was fine. Yeah, I was in a great career and great family, et cetera, et cetera. So I got over that. Then it's like, okay, next milestone, next pivot, but it's never been as worrisome as 29 was. Everything else I've embraced, even menopause.
How wonderful is that? And you see the pressure that some folks put on themselves for those milestone ages when the clock strikes midnight all of a sudden. What have I done? I have a colleague in the podcasting universe. She has a podcast called 40 Drinks, and it's about turning 40, what it's like to be in your 40s, because when she entered her 40s, she thought she should have been at a certain place and she
Yes.
wasn't, right?
Yes. Yes.
And
Exactly.
and for me, I came of age in the 70s. So look, my 20s are a blur. I got serious at the end of the 20s and then started to really knock it out of the park when I turned 30. But frankly,
Yeah.
it was a
Yes.
wild time. So, as you became a proactive and pro aging silver hair model and healthy lifestyle influencer on social media, you were transitioning skills that you had picked up over the years. But what did you learn initially as you started to create your presence? And again, you'd been on Instagram as a photographer. You understood what image needed to look like and feel like to reach and connect with people. And clearly, with video editing, you weren't afraid of doing that because of your background experience, but you still had to build a community. What
Yes.
did you learn about having conversations with folks? Because listeners, is not social media is not about dumping content. Okay.
Right.
It's
Oh no.
actually going on to other people's content and commenting and
Yes.
engaging and
Yes.
sharing. What was that and what year did you actually, set up your Diane Britt Smith account? It
So
was
I set it
2020?
up many years ago. If I had to guess, it would probably be 2018, 2019. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
honestly. But I started investing in it mid about 1 year ago.
Yeah. Oh my
I
gosh.
stopped focusing on just what's going on in my life, but and this goes to the heart of your question. What are the points of intersection
Right.
for women 60 plus in this space? Meaning this world of being active, not necessarily understanding all that's going on with your body, with your relationships, with your hormones. What are the points of intersection? So we may have different drivers, we may have different stressors, but if you and I are in the same, I'm going to say boomer category, although that's such a wide range, there are so many things that we can learn from each other
Right.
and be inspired and encouraged by. So your silver hair journey may be very different from mine. As an example, that's a a good point to make. I didn't color my hair. I didn't have to ditch the dye. I colored my hair in when I was 17 or 18 by spraying something called Sun In. I don't know what it was, but I would spray it in my dark hair and sit in the sun, and it, I'm sure it was very unhealthy, turned light. After that, I saw my first gray strand 28, 29, and I loved my mother's gray hair. She grayed at 17. So I never associated it with age. We would have certain conversations about that. And she told me something that has stuck with me, and I still believe it. Diane, gray hair doesn't age you. Your face, your neck, your hands, your attitude, those things age you. If you dress well, not expensively, but if you dress well and carry yourself with confidence, people are not going to mistake you for an old woman. So get over that. So I never had a desire to color my hair, but I share that story because lots and lots of people are not ready to ditch the dye, and there's nothing wrong with that. So my ultimate point to you is, just because we've come to this place by different routes, different journeys, we have so much more in common than we do not
Right.
in common.
And what I love about what you're saying, Diane, is that there's room for everybody. Even in this category of pro aging, pro silver hair, all of that, you can have so many different walks of life. And my favorite quote is by Seth Godin: "Sure, it's been done before, but not by you and not for us."
Love
So,
that. And I love Seth Godin. Oh my
yeah,
goodness. Plain
yeah,
speak.
exactly. And so there's a lot of pro aging models in this space doing wonderful and unique things with their vibration. So
Yes.
as you began to build community, Diane, how did those conversations go? How did you find your people that said, "Oh, I want Diane. Yeah, I'm one of them."
So largely the Instagram algorithm. If you follow someone who is similarly situated, they're going to suggest someone and then another one and another one. If you come across on the For You page or the Explore page someone who plays golf, all of a sudden the suggestions are golfers. So you have to
Yes.
decide, whether you want to go down that rabbit hole. Maybe I'll take golf lessons, or come back to the similarly situated. So it's a combination of those things.
Right.
And I learned from so many other women who are in the space, who are fashionistas. I love fashion, but I don't consider myself a fashionista. Again, I'm going to quote my mother: if you wear good quality clothes and they fit well, it's fine. You do not have to spend a whole bunch of money that you may or may not have on expensive clothes. I live in a very small place, so I don't have that much space to put things. If something comes in the house, something else generally leaves.
I like
So
that.
that's sort of my mid range view on things.
Well, as a follower, I see you as a practical fashionista. I see you because you go in, you have no problem upcycling. You don't have any problem bringing
Right.
home a bunch of things that might have been on the sale rack at
Yes.
Nordstrom's or wherever, but you try them on, you get people engaged by saying, "What do you think?" And of
Yes.
course, as someone who loves color, I
Yes.
always
Yes.
love
Yes. Me too.
the color vibe that you're always putting out into the world. What have you learned about yourself from this experience? Because it's one thing to, take photos and share or to interview people, but to come to the world fully transparent, wanting to serve in this certain way, it can be a little intimidating, and you can set yourself up for folks who might say some negative things to you or about you as you're out there trying to bring joy and thoughtfulness to your content.
That is a very good question. And it doesn't feel good when somebody hurls at you for something that you don't feel is warranted. Also, love fest that people share, that women particularly tend to share with each other, can be uplifting and encouraging, but we have to put that in its place. So trying to think of an example of that specifically. But I have learned a lot about myself. I've learned that I can still learn. My learning curve in this space has been high. I'm now working with brands on various things, and that is a very different space in terms of negotiating your worth, as
Right.
opposed to my agent, my acting or modeling agent, getting me work. The price is fixed. The time is fixed and you fit into that. With brand deals, it's very different. And you can talk yourself out of a deal by requesting too much or undervalue yourself by accepting too little. So I am learning those lessons all the time. I am learning the value of continuing to be more interested than interesting. That is difficult in a on a platform that you are, oh, look at me, look at my outfit. But there's always generally a reason.
Yeah,
Yesterday, I posted me hula hooping at my mother-in-law's house. She had a hula hoop and I ran outside. I looked around to see who was, driving on the street and I started hula hooping. Looked at the video later and I'm like, you look absolutely ridiculous. And then I back, you're just fearful that somebody's going to laugh at you. So I just put that out there. Go ahead and laugh at me. And I learned, it's okay if I'm looking crazy doing the hula hoop. I got some exercise and you may be able to do that too.
absolutely. And Diane, I was going to bring up the hula hoop because I loved it that you went out there and did that. And it was not gracefully. Okay. You
No.
got out there, you did it your way, which was
Yes.
wonderful, which is how most of us are going to do it, right? We're not
Y-
perfect. But that contrast as far as your hesitancy with when you throw on some wig and you do some acting that you're this person who's aging and things aren't going well. And so you aren't concerned when you're acting. Is that because you've taken on a role versus it being you?
I've never thought about that question. I guess the answer would be yes. There are different ways to get messages across, and
Mhm.
humor is an important one, especially if you're poking fun at yourself. Self deprecating is always better than poking fun at someone else. So that's where that came from. And yes, acting is fun. I need to have fun on this journey, and putting on a wig and making fun of myself is a good way to do it, particularly since my age group has spent a lifetime judging other people. Why would she wear that dress? What is wrong with her? She doesn't have on any Spanx. Oh my goodness. All that cleavage, all of these things that
She's wearing white and it's not Memorial Day yet?
exactly, exactly. So to make fun of those and also let myself and my generation know there are no rules. Even if I think, you look a certain way, that doesn't matter. So
Right.
that's what the age appropriate is. We can wear things that my mother is probably turning over in her grave as we speak, but that's okay, because we broaden our horizon and our out.
Diane, let's talk a little bit about modeling at this age and stage of your life because so often we have these ageist beliefs. They're just indoctrinated into us that modeling is for younger people. And if they do bring in older, it's maybe late 40s, early 50s. How did you even know to talk to an agent about modeling? I mean, I'm fascinated by this because I'm seeing so many women in the pro aging world. And of course, in Europe, it's on Vogue magazine, women over the age of 60 being championed and spotlighted and celebrated. How did you know to do this?
It's a wonderful thing to see, and I started seeing more of it. And again, as I'm pivoting my career, this is a space that I see as wide open. So why not? Let me jump feet first. In terms of how I got my first gig, it was Instagram. Someone I don't I was still posting personal things at that point, personal things exclusively, as opposed to being part of a community. And a casting director was casting something for a senior citizen community outside of Philadelphia and found me and asked me if I was interested. So I said yes. I don't know. I think the person probably scrolled and saw that I had had some background in it. So I did this gig in Philadelphia. Ironically, the scenes that I was in, evidently, I and my partner were too young for the senior citizen community. So they put us in the scene with the picnic basket and then took us out because we didn't match the vibe. They were looking for I was 58 at the time. They were looking for 75 or so. So we were in a yoga shot, we were in a pool shot, but it was by ourselves. So I was like, oh, this is fun. So then the next casting director came looking for me for something. And so it went on and on. And then I decided to start reaching out to agents myself and pitching myself. So that was in DC and New York. And it sort of grew from there. So that's how I landed where I am. Side note, often, we look at someone and think something is very easy. If I see you hit a perfect golf ball, I'm like, oh, if Andy can do that, show me how to hold the club and I'm going to hit that just like you did. And you've had the Malcolm Gladwell 30,000 hours or, whatever it is. And I'm thinking that I can do that.
First
Just
time
show me
out.
how to hold the, yeah. So I get a lot of that. So how did you tell me how to get an agent? So what I tell people, because I want to encourage everyone, if you think this is something you're passionate about, do research. Just start researching all day, every day. And if the research holds your attention and you're ready to move to the next step, then dig a little deeper and research some more. And then I'm always happy to share my journey. So that has also been a running thread. In terms of what we see on commercials and in print, again, you look how you look, and if you have something that a production company or a brand is interested in, then they hire a casting company, then they hire an agent, and the agent looks for us. I want to see more people who look like us on screen. Someone asked me, I've auditioned for bladder leak garments several times. And a couple of people have said, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to be on a package of a bladder leak ad? Doesn't that, make you feel old? Absolutely not. People my age and younger use these bladder leak underwear and you can't see them under their pants. There's nothing wrong with that. I'd rather see someone vibrant than someone who has one foot in the grave, pardon
Right.
me, because you can't relate to that. Maybe I shouldn't be wearing the bladder leak pads because
Mhm.
she's 98 and has one foot in the grave. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know what I mean? So we
Oh,
need to
listen,
connect.
yeah,
We need to
especially if you've been
connect the
birthing
dots.
babies. Yeah, especially if you've been birthing
Exactly.
babies. There's nothing wrong with bladder leaking. My goodness, your body's
Yeah.
been transferring all of that waste for
Right.
60 plus years. It needs
Yes.
some help, and you can maybe have surgery, but surgery comes with its own risk. I love
For
that you're
sure.
making it more acceptable to get these
Yes.
garments. And I
Yes.
love that as a side note too, is that connectivity of, hey, vibrant, and I'm not letting my age stop me or cage me
Exactly.
from doing things I want. And guess what? There's a product that can help me be out there and I don't have to worry.
Yes.
Oh
The
my
body
gosh.
positivity movement has also helped with opening the demographic that we see in commercials,
Right.
that we see in ads. So I don't believe in anti-aging. You cannot turn back the clock, and it propagates the wrong message to say that, you can use some lotions and potions, as I like to say, to erase all of the
You can't.
you might be able to do it for a while, and as the technology and science gets better, we are minimizing the lines and things that we don't like, but some things it's okay.
It's body
It's okay. We just
shaming.
need to be
It's
okay with it.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
age shaming so that and listeners, as you know, when I came out about my age at the age of 66, I was in the startup ecosystem, which was very youth centered, right?
Mhm.
And I held up the Root US 66 sign in front of me. But when you see the photo, I'm kind of like, will you still love me now that you know it's 66?
Yeah.
But what Don't Be Caged by Your Age has done for me, and I encourage anybody for aging out loud, it has freed me. It has been liberating so that when I look in the mirror
Absolutely.
and I see my barnacles and brown spots and wrinkles and all the things, I go, that's age appropriate. And
Yes.
gosh, I'm still
Yes.
looking at myself at 67. Isn't that a miracle? I'm still
Yeah.
here and it's a privilege.
And other people feel that and they write me and they talk about that. You have helped me embrace my graying hair, my wrinkles. It's okay. I'm doing the best I can with what I have right where I am. It does not mean, and this is also part of my platform, that we can't do what we need to do to make our lives better. Things we didn't need to worry about at 40, we need to worry about now. For example, broken bones. So we work on our balance. We have to worry more about gut health. So we watch what we eat. You have to pay attention to swollen joints. There's a reason. they're swollen? It's inflammation. So why am I having more inflammation? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when we realize, once again, the points of intersection among all of us, it's an easy way to connect, and it's so empowering.
Well, and what you also do, which is wonderful, is that this is my aging body and I'm dolling it up. Okay. I'm wearing this
Yes,
vibrant clothes. This dress is tight and I'm happy with
yes,
that, right? It's form fitting and
yes,
it looks good. And here's an example: go out, go put those clothes on, try them on for
yes,
yourself, see how it lifts you up. Because
right,
for many of us, adornment, whether it's accessories, colors, the outfit, how you're doing your hair, whatever that is, it's uplifting. And just
yes,
because you're a certain age does not mean you have to stop doing that. Right. So
exactly.
I'm so grateful for your representation for that as well.
Thank you. And I feel the same way about you.
So, as you are looking at the pro aging community and folks, the anti aging, the reason we don't like to even use those words is because it creates fear and shame and blame for something that is just natural and a part of your life. And we want you to always be feeling good, whatever age or stage that you're at. How would you like to see society and corporations view folks over 60 and women with silver hair?
Meet us where we are. Judge
Wonderful.
not what you see, but what you hear and what you feel. If I present to you vibrancy versus take me at my word, listen to me,
Right.
realize that I may not be as fast with technology as I used to, but meet me where I am because ageism goes both ways. We discriminate against younger people. They don't know what they're talking about. Why are you doing that? Oh, you'll find out later why you should have been saving your money instead of spending it on, whatever.
Right.
Ageism goes both ways. We need to meet people right where they are, right where we are.
And for folks who are battling that internalized ageist belief, and sometimes you don't even know where it came from, it's just what you saw on film, saw in your life. What advice do you have to help folks really embrace this age so that they don't feel caged by their age, that they're looking at their 60s and 70s and 80s and beyond as possibilities?
Join a community. So, whether that's a group of younger people at church who are golfing or cycling, whatever you're up for, don't be afraid to be the oldest person in the room. I love being the oldest person in the room. There is reverence. Sometimes there's deference, and that's a good thing. People get up and offer their seat. I don't have an issue with that because they also look and say, "Oh, don't let the gray hair fool you." But if you are, woe is me, and then, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I used to be able to do that. I hear that a lot. Oh, I used to be able to, do a backflip or a split or whatever. Can't do that anymore for various reasons. But what can you do? You can walk around the neighborhood, but find your tribe. Find a place where you feel comfortable and you can contribute. That is the best thing I can say. So it's a community center, it's Instagram, TikTok, it's whatever it is, a dance class, it may be chair yoga or aerobics. That's
Right.
okay. But don't you because you get spun up in your head. And get some therapy. Don't underestimate therapy. It's a wonderful thing. It can be, if you find the right therapist, it can be a game changer.
Oh my gosh. And folks, Medicare and whatever additional you have covers it. All right. So you can easily, if you have MedX, you can call the MedX folks, but just even call the Medicare people. You will not have to spend a dime. And it's so important to have someone holding your hand and helping you walk through life's challenges. And Diane, I just love this quote: don't be afraid to be the oldest person in the room. Oh,
That's right.
I'm
That's
gonna
right.
be reusing that a lot. How can
Yeah.
folks work with you, learn from you, follow you, stay in touch with you?
So absolutely my Instagram, reach out. I encourage that. I speak with a lot of people offline. If you are in New York City or DC, because I am in both cities, let's hang out. Let's have lunch. I want to listen to you and learn from you and figure out even more points of intersection.
I love
A
it.
rising tide lifts all boats is one of my favorite quotes. So, yeah, I
That's
think that's it.
That's absolutely true. Diane, you are always so generous, and that level of connection is so important, folks. You've heard about the blue zone. The number one reason that people have longevity in their life is through connection. And it's that and finding community. So be sure to follow Diane everywhere she glows. And I'm going to wrap up this episode with a quote that you put into your bio, Diane, that goes along with this episode, which is that collectively we can flip the negative ageism narrative toward positivity. We are still vibrant, vivacious, and full of relevant contributions to a modern society. Woohoo!
Yeah. Amen. And don't
Thank
let
you.
anybody tell you otherwise.
Thank you so much, Diane, for
Thank you.
joining me for this delicious conversation. I know you have lightened listeners' lives through your insights and advice.
So nice to meet you, and thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to staying connected with you.
Thank you. And listeners, remember, as we've been talking about, you have so much to give. Don't let those internalized ageist beliefs prevent you from pursuing new dreams and opportunities, no matter what age you're at. Until next time, I'm wishing you a delicious day everywhere you glow. Cheers from Boston.
Bye-bye. Thanks again.
Listeners, I'm so grateful you carved out time to tune in and grab the gems from this delicious conversation. Be sure to hop on over to Don't Be Caged by Your Age on LinkedIn or Instagram to share your thoughts about ageism and unretirement. Because in this space, your age doesn't define you, it refines you. If you are inspired by a story you hear, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast. To receive an alert whenever a new show is posted, please join the Don't Be Caged by Your Age newsletter. Every month, you'll receive links to the podcast and helpful resources for creating possibilities for your unretirement days. Thank you for tuning in. I am so excited to hear how you found ways to thrive after 65. Waving from Boston, cheers.